all, I want to welcome you to our All Things Fulfilled channel. And we want to introduce a new format of study, which we're going to call In and Out. And the reason that we're calling it In and Out is because our aim is to get in with a very short message and then get out. The reason we're doing this is we understand not everyone has the time to be with us live on our Google Hangouts, where we have video studies that last for at least a couple of hours almost every day. And even though people enjoy those videos, we have a group of people who desire them and who want to participate in that manner. But we also understand that not everyone has that kind of time. They want to get in and out. They want to get some quality information, but they want to get it, reasonably quickly, and be able to listen to shorter bites of information as they have the time. And so that's one of the reasons that we're doing it. And we value your time. We know it's important to you. You want some quality information, and you want to be able to study without having to sit for a long time or participate for a long time. So we're trying to accommodate each segment of our audience in a way that's going to be a qualitative experience for them. Now, at the end of the video, I'm going to ask you to do three things, and we'll mention those three things at the end of the video. But in this series of videos for our In and Out presentation, we're going to talk about the book of Revelation and give evidence that the book of Revelation was written before 70 AD. And we're going to do that without getting into the extra biblical sources. We're going to use all internal evidence. And for the most part, we're going to do that right within the 24th chapter of Matthew, or at least the section of Matthew that pertains particularly to the destruction of Jerusalem, which is Matthew chapters 23, 24, and 25, but largely from Matthew chapter 24. And our aim and our premise is very simple, and it is the fact that Matthew 24 describes events which would occur within the first century generation. And if we can demonstrate from those events in Matthew 24, which were to occur within the first century generation, that there are parallels to these events in the book of Revelation, then since Jesus prophesied concerning the destruction of the temple and the city in Matthew 24, if those events are parallel in Revelation chapter, in the book of Revelation, then what we have is proof that the book of Revelation was written prior to 70 AD and that the events apply to that time. So that's our premise. That's what we're going to be studying, and we believe it's going to be an interesting study for you along the way. So let's go in and start with our first point that we're going to talk about, and we will get underway with our study today. The first point that we're going to talk about in this short video is the fact that the temple would be destroyed in that first century generation, and we all know that the temple was destroyed in 70 AD, at least those of us who are familiar with the Bible. Now, when you read in Matthew chapter 24, and actually we could start in Matthew 23, but let's look at Matthew 24, after Jesus had talked about the statement in the latter part of verse 23, when he says, "See, your house is left to you desolate." He was talking to those Jews who were opposing his teachings, and he told them that their house was left to them desolate. They were going to persecute and kill the saints that Jesus would send to them. They were going to persecute them from city to city, crucify them, and even crucify him, which they did. And he said for that purpose and for that reason, God was going to take vengeance on them, and that he was going to leave their house desolate, which means that it was going to be destroyed. And he makes it very clear that this would occur with those in Jerusalem. Then as he departed from the temple, and his disciples came to him to show him the buildings of the temple, after making this very, very astounding statement about it, the Bible says, when Jesus heard them, he said to them, "Do you not see all these things? Assuredly, I say to you, not one stone shall be left here upon another that shall not be thrown down." So he says there's not one stone that will be left upon another that would not be thrown down. Now, as he sat upon the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him and they asked him, saying, "Tell us, when will these things be? What will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age?" So Jesus' message in Matthew 24 has to do with the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem. And that is a pretty widely accepted fact. Doesn't need much proof for us to talk about it, but it is a subject of Matthew chapter 24. Now you have three parallel chapters, particularly in the Gospels, the Synoptic Gospels as we call them. And you have Matthew chapter 24, Mark chapter 13, and also Luke chapter 21. Now to see that Jesus is speaking specifically of the destruction of the city, we turn to Luke chapter 21, verses 20 through 22. And in Luke 21, he says in verse 20, "When you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, then know that its desolation is near. Then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. Let those who are in the midst of her depart, and let not those who are in the countries enter her. For these are the days of vengeance, that all things which are written may be fulfilled." So Jesus said that when they saw Jerusalem surrounded by armies, they would know that that desolation, which we find mentioned in Matthew 24, was near. And it would be at that time when the city would be destroyed and when the prophecy would be fulfilled. And again, that occurred in 70 AD within that first century generation. Now, when we turn to the book of Revelation, we also find the same prophecy. But I want to read a couple more verses from Luke so that you can see the connection to Revelation chapter 11 that we will be going to. In Luke 21, beginning at verse 24, the Bible says, "And they will fall by the edge of the sword and be led away captive into all nations, and Jerusalem will be trampled by the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles are fulfilled." Now remember, all of this would take place within that first century generation. Now then, let's go to Revelation chapter 11, and we're going to look at Revelation 11 and verse 2, 1 and 2. The Bible says, "Then I was given a reed like a measuring rod, and the angel stood, saying, Rise and measure the temple of God, the altar, and those who worship there. But leave out the court which is outside the temple, and do not measure it. For it has been given to the Gentiles, and they will tread the holy city underfoot 42 months." Now, this outer court is a reference to Jerusalem. It is a reference to the city of Jerusalem. And it was given to the Gentiles, and they would tread it underfoot for 42 months. The Romans came in, and they destroyed the city, burned it to the ground, and led many away captive and killed many by the sword, hundreds of thousands of them, just as it's recorded in Luke when he says they would be led captive into all nations and that they would be killed by the sword. And you also have the historical reference of Josephus, which will corroborate many of these points and additional histories. But our aim is to show you directly from the scriptures. So here's our point. Since the city of Jerusalem was destroyed in 70 AD, and the book of Revelation also talks about the destruction of that city, and we'll see more verses related to that, then Revelation had to be written before the destruction of Jerusalem because it was a prophecy of things that would come to pass just as the Lord announced. So that's the first point that we want to make. We encourage you to go back, look at the passages that we've studied, and consider them in the light of what we were saying, that the temple would be destroyed in the first century. And that temple was destroyed. It was given to the Gentiles. They trod the city underfoot in terms of destroying the city, the temple, the people, and that fulfilled the prophecy, which demonstrated that it was done in 70 AD. So that is evidence that the book of Revelation was written before 70 AD and was fulfilled in the events connected with the 70 AD destruction of the temple. Now, I mentioned to you earlier that I would ask you to do three things. First, please subscribe to the channel. And the reason we encourage you to subscribe is because when we announce other videos, you will get a message in your inbox letting you know that a new video has been posted so that you can watch it at your leisure. Also, when we have live events, if you want to attend those live events and be a part of the class where you can interact, because it's an interactive class, then you can participate from that perspective as well. The next reason we ask you to, the next reason is that we want you to share this information. Share it on your social media. You'll find some social media buttons below that you can just click and you can share it. If you haven't subscribed to them, go ahead and subscribe so that you're able to share the video. And that means that more people will be able to see the information. And then thirdly, for those of you who understand this view and who would like to be more active in helping us to spread the message, then please help support this ministry because we take this word around the world to other countries as well as to places all over the United States. And your help and support would be greatly appreciated. I'm William Bell with All Things Fulfilled. We've been in and now we're out. We'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.